Dzień dobry, Dominika Cosic, Salon brukselski i tym razem w ostatnim odcinku przed wakacjami chciałam przywitać bardzo szczególnego gościa, bo jest to pierwszy zagraniczny eurodeputowany, którego mam przyjemność spotkać, pan Nigel Farage. Hello.
Hello.
You shouldn't be worried, we'll speak in English, not Polish.
Good.
First I wanted to ask you about future of European Union and future of United Kingdom because more and more frequently we are talking about possible referendum in UK, and what do you think? Mr. Cameron will decide for a referendum or not?
Well, there's a big debate going on in the UK. I think partly it's being pushed by us in UKIP. UKIP is becoming more successful. The views that we hold have now become absolutely mainstream views. And the opinion polls now show, and this is not just the odd opinion poll, this is a settled view over many polls, that over 2/3 of the people of the UK would like to have a simple free trade relationship with Europe, but not to be members of this political union. So there's a big debate going on. The press, many elements of it are getting quite angry. And Mr. Cameron, when he was the opposition leader, said, I give you this cast iron guarantee that if I'm Prime Minister, there'll be a referendum on our relationship with Europe. And it hasn't happened. Now, we're obviously pushing very hard for that referendum. He's now said there might be a referendum. There might be at some point in the future, but I don't want it to be on whether we stay in the EU or not. I want it to be on the type of relationship. And actually, he's making things worse for himself, because 70% of people say they want an in-out referendum. Let's have a simple choice whether we want to be here or not. So the momentum is building, and I think there will be a referendum in the UK. Well, I would have thought probably in 2016. That to me would be the most likely. I'd love to have it next Thursday. But if you are giving you an objective assessment, I think after the next general election, late 15 or early 2016, we will have a referendum. Whether it'll be the right referendum, whether it'll be the one that I want or a different one, I don't know. But the momentum is building, certainly.
So what can be after this referendum, when Brits will decide to leave UK, to leave EU?
I think if we get the right question, and
yes, it depends on the right question.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there is a possibility we get a referendum that says, look, the rest of Europe is moving on to a fiscal union. Do you want to do that or stay where we are? And I don't want to stay where we are, so it depends. But if we do get a simple in-out question, it'll depend on 2 or 3 factors. The first being, will it be a free and fair referendum? I've watched referendums in Ireland and countries like that where the Commission, the government, taxpayers' money is used to back the yes side, and they massively outspend the no side. That, in any democratic setup, is frankly unacceptable. So will it be a free and fair referendum? But if it is a free and fair referendum, all we have to do on my side of the argument is to point out one very simple fact, and it's this. You can go on trading with countries, you can go on being friends with countries, you can go on having reciprocal deals with neighbouring countries without being a member of a political union. And if we can get that point across, then we will vote to leave. And when Britain votes to leave, there'll be lots and lots of other countries that want exactly the same thing.
That's quite interesting, because as you told, everything depends on the question. And as I know, bureaucrats from Brussels, they are very tricky, and the questions will be very, very tricky. And
yeah, I mean, every attempt will be made for us not to have a proper free and fair referendum. But if UKIP continues to grow in the polls, and if we continue to pose a threat to the establishment, then the likelihood of getting the right referendum becomes stronger.
what is the impact of financial crisis on your popularity, on the popularity of your faction?
I think the real anger about the financial crisis hasn't really hit the politicians in the way that I thought it might, because so much of what's gone wrong has actually been a political failure, a failure to keep some sensible banking rules that in many cases we'd had for a long time. So the public anger is really on the bankers in the UK and not on the politicians. So the net effect on politics has been surprisingly small.
And what do you think about fiscal union, possible fiscal union?
Mad, absolutely mad. I mean, economic and monetary union isn't working, is it? I mean, look at the north-south split that exists within the euro. Look at the massive competitiveness gap that there is between Germany and between Greece, and indeed increasingly also between France and Germany as well. And so we've got a model that's failing, and our solution to that is to double it up and make it a fiscal union as well. I think it's an absolutely mad idea, but they're determined to do it.
Unfortunately.
I think very unfortunately, because once again, they intend to do this. They don't intend to ask the people. They don't intend to put it to free and fair referendums. They intend to say the crisis is so great that we must have more power. Well, as I say, it's not working already. And all we're doing is we're building up a Europe where we're going to have states that are trapped with massive unemployment, with impossibly low growth figures for years and years to come. And we're stirring up a Europe of real disharmony.
But why do you want to leave European Union? It is such a good organization, such a successful. So why do you want to leave this?
Successful.
Of course.
Do you think that with unemployment rates of over 50% in the southern Mediterranean countries, with the whole of the European area, in competitive terms, falling behind the rest of the world, with opinion polls showing right across Europe that the majority of Europeans do not believe any good comes out of this at all, I don't think it's a success. I think it's an absolute dramatic failure. And in terms of where we are as people, it is a retrograde, regressive step. You know, I look at a country like yours, which has had a complicated and often very difficult history with you know, a good degree of suffering as well. You know, you escaped in 1990 from half a century of being dominated by the communists. You were, you know, Poland had its own parliament and made its own laws, and now you find yourself, 20 years on, part of a union that is now actually making more laws for Poland than your own parliament is. How is that progress? How is that success? Surely what we should be arguing for is a Europe where we trade together, cooperate together, where we're friends together, and we can do all of those things without these institutions, without losing our independence, our self-respect and our pride.
I can imagine UK out of EU, but can you imagine Poland out of EU? Again, between Russia and Germany?
Well, I think this, of course, is one of the big differences, that when Poland joined the EU, she was also joining NATO. And this was all goodbye Moscow. So
yes, but NATO is weaker and weaker and is losing power.
NATO is struggling for a role in a post-Warsaw Pact world. That is certainly true. I do understand why people in Poland voted to join Brussels and say goodbye to Moscow. I completely understand that then, but a lot's changed since then. You know, I mean, I don't see any prospect of Putin's tanks rolling into Eastern. I mean, I really don't see any immediate prospect of that, or any long-term prospect, for that matter, of that. It will be Britain or one of the northern European countries that leaves first. The effect of us leaving is we will be the catalyst for a huge change and for a different kind of Europe. And so I'm not expecting Poland to leave the EU quickly. After all, in a way, you've only just joined it. But I do think the debate within Poland about what's happening to your democracy and your independence can only get stronger.
And what other countries can leave EU? You told some northern, like Sweden, like Denmark?
I think the northern Europe, I mean, I think Sweden, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, these are countries who are
Netherlands as well?
very Eurosceptic now, fiercely Eurosceptic. I mean, don't forget.
But the citizens as well?
Well, don't forget that the referendum on the Constitution, 2/3 of the people in the Netherlands said no. There's an election in September in the Netherlands, and there are parties on the left and the right with very big Eurosceptic platforms that are going to take a huge number of votes. So I think of all the countries in which politics has changed in the European Union in my time being here, the Netherlands has probably seen the greatest change.
And what do you think about new French president, Mr. Hollande?
Well, in a way, he's good news, because
he's not Sarkozy.
Well, he's not Sarkozy, but at least Sarkozy had some personality.
Yes.
Hollande's first steps were to reduce the retirement age from 62 to 60 and to increase the minimum wage. He is driving a wedge between the French and German economies, and the competitiveness gap between those countries will get greater and greater. For those of us that want to see the end of the euro, Hollande is going to be our little helper.
So do you really think that it is the end of Mercosi?
Yes.
Because I have kind of personal doubt that because I guess that France and Germany have to cooperate very closely.
Well, they may have to cooperate, but as it becomes increasingly obvious to the peoples of France that being stuck inside the euro is to be in the wrong economy, then I think we'll have an even bigger European debate. This won't happen this year. It won't happen next year. This big debate, maybe 4 or 5 years down the road. But I think Hollande's brand of statism, Hollande's brand of hating successful people and wanting to tax them as much as possible, is actually going to do France enormous economic harm.
Do you see any leaders between European politicians?
Well, there are two distinct types of leaders. One are the national leaders who actually get elected, and the other are the EU's own institutions. Yeah, Sarkozy was a strong leader, whether you liked him or not. Merkel is clearly a very strong leader, whether you vote for her or not. But the European institutions themselves, with Barroso and Van Rompuy, they are a joke.
And Cathy Ashton.
Oh, dear, oh Lord, that's even more of a joke. These people are a joke. They're becoming an international laughingstock. The rest of the world does not look to the leaders of the EU with any respect at all. Frankly, they view them as jumped up, overpaid, unelected bureaucrats.
I'm asking you because even between national politicians, it's very difficult to find real leaders. And I'm asking also myself, what is the reason of this crisis of leadership?
I think that's true. I think across the Western world, half a century ago, those of us that were free, but half a century ago, we did have much stronger, bigger figures and people with perhaps more achievements in life before they'd come into politics. And there has been a victory for career politicians, people who go from university straight into elected politics. So the sooner that can be turned around, the better. But it still does produce interesting people. And arguably, as I say, Merkel is a very interesting, very strong person with a very interesting history, having grown up in the East and having made this amazing transformation into being what she is. So democracy is still throwing up some interesting people. But these institutions, the dead hand of the Commission and the Council is not working.
Yes, of course, it is other case. But do you really believe in democratization of European Union?
It'll never happen. Forget what I think. If they were going to democratize the European Union, they would have used the European Constitution as the opportunity to do that. They rejected that idea completely. From the start, from Jean Monnet onwards, these institutions haven't been undemocratic. And your question implies we could democratize. No. The European Union is anti-democratic. It hates democracy. It has hated it from the start. The whole plan is that the power is vested with the unelected officials. It's called the community method. And if you listen to the so-called parliamentary leaders in this parliament, from the EPP group, the Socialist group and the Green group and the Liberals as well, they all say we must have more community method, which means less democracy.
Yes, and even next election to European Parliament should be not anymore from national list, but from the European list.
Well, there is talk of that, and there is a proposal before the Parliament. It's called the Duff Report. Will it get passed between now and 2014? I don't know, but I don't think so. And one of the real reasons why this European Union can never work is there is no European demos.
So what is the most possible scenario for European Union, in your opinion?
What is the most that it should do? Well, look, as I say, I think we all, as neighbours in the same time zone and with many common interests, need to have a forum in which we do cooperate and trade and make agreements and do responsible things that neighbours in a street would want to do and we, as neighbouring nations, should want to do. But I don't want a European Commission having the sole right to make law. I don't want this vast, expensive parliament that we're sitting in now. I don't want a European Court of Justice in Luxembourg overruling our own highest courts and supreme courts. So I am looking for a very minimal Europe that is based on trade and cooperation.
But as we observe European Union, I have the impression that there is only one alternative. From the one side, it's domination of France and Germany, especially Germany, or it is domination of EU institution. And I don't know, honestly, what is worse.
Well, they're both as bad as each other, aren't they? I mean,
Yes.
I don't want either of those, and I'm sure most people in Poland don't want either of those either. You know, you wouldn't start from where we are today, and as I say, my campaign is for the UK to break its links and to encourage other countries to do the same, and I hope to be the catalyst a few years down the road for a completely different kind of Europe.
Yes, but what will be after? Because for Poland, I can imagine future of UK because you are enough strong, you have a very close relation with US, but Poland, for example, we are not a global player.
Do you want to be an independent country or not?
Of course that we
That's the
want.
question. Well, you cannot be an independent, self-governing democracy and a member of the European Union as it's currently shaped. And
Yes,
that ultimately is the choice.
Yes, but some people say that, okay, we can be independent, but poor and weakness.
Well, independent countries around the world, some are poor and some are incredibly rich. You know, you're not going to get richer.
When you are India, Russia.
You are not going to get richer in the modern world as Poland, stuck inside this European Union with its massively excessive legislative programme, both in terms of employment regulations, but in particular in terms of environmental legislation. There is an obsession in Brussels with carbon dioxide. There is almost a determination to drive manufacturing business and mining and all of these activities out of Europe. And you, as a country which still has coal and which still has heavy industry, are likely to suffer
Less and less.
worse than, well, you've got less and less, and that's not a surprise given where we are with these policies. But you know, you will not sit here and say to me in 5 years' time, we've reaped a great economic benefit being inside this union.
You're very critical towards EU, but from the other side, you're also part of this system as a member of European Parliament.
Yes, I've come here. I wanted to find out what was going on. I wanted to be able to talk about it, commentate on it, and I've done that. And as I say, since I've been here, my opposition to this place has grown much, much stronger. This is anti-democratic. It wants to destroy the nation state. It wants you to have a new flag, a new anthem, a new army, and a new police force with an unelected president at the top. Isn't that just so reminiscent of where you guys were 20 years ago?
It was Vladimir Bukovsky, former Russian dissident, who told this.
Yes, who of course is now a member of UKIP. And Vladimir has often said, you know, I've lived through all this before, we're recreating it, we're making a terrible historic mistake.
And the last question, again, about future, about future of UK. I'm thinking about Scotland.
I think the Scottish independence movement, to me, has best part run its course. I think the United Kingdom needs to change. I think we need to have a federal model for the United Kingdom. I don't think Scotland's going to leave.
You don't think so?
No.
So we shouldn't be worried. The most possible is that EU will not resist.
I don't think Scotland's going to leave, but I do think that Britain is going to go on having a huge debate about our future with the European Union, and I think we're going to become the leaders in Europe over the next decade for a new kind of Europe.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Farage.
Okay.
Dziękuję bardzo Państwu i zapraszam po wakacjach.